And using the trusted key, you can test and check for those keys then, and then you can test the file validity for that matter. Suddenly that file can be cached. You don't have to distribute it over HTTPS. You can now distribute it over plain HTTP FTP or a BitTorrent for that matter, because you can go and check that file. Erroring status. Bitrot happened on the server, you can go and check the file because the file has been signed. Should I have used it? Does HTTPS add value in this chain?
Yeah.
No.
Yes. But not on those points, but what about IP that's secret?
IP that?
Is secret.
Intellectual property, IP.
Yeah, secret. You don't want that traveling over the internet.
Right.
In that case, that would be an open source project, and the things that you would, HTTPS and SSH, are the developers pushing the code to the servers. Once it's built, and once it's in, it is.
It's a different scenario, but the thing that
you don't want the in-flight to the project to be like the NSA has. There's documented cases where they've hit firewall companies and others where they've injected some code, and obviously that happened in between on the way because they can't even audit where that happened.
Yeah, I mean the real point about it, the HTTPS thing, it seems to me is it's all about defining what you need.
exactly.
Because the point of what you were saying earlier, there was even answers as to what constitutes authentication, what counts as encryption. That's just two small parts. Yeah. So if you don't know what you're actually talking about, you can't actually say whether or not what your aims are actually being met.
The repository example, I would not want my employer to see what packages are downloading from the Debian repository, for instance, using HTTPS accessing repositories. That's why I would use HTTPS for repositories as well.
So you're hiding stuff from your employer.
Yes, exactly. So I don't want to see that I have .torrent
as it turns out, being able to hide things from your employer makes you a better worker, according to recent psychiatric results. The more you allow people to have privacy in an office.
Okay, but I'm going to disagree with your review, and I'm going to state the following for you.
Cool.
When I employed you,
just listen.
for using my...
If you disagree with that result, you need to take that up with the psychiatrists who found it.
Okay, firstly, I have an issue with psychiatrists. So that's where I will differ with psychiatrists on a few things. The other thing that I will say there is that when you use that equipment to steal stuff that you don't want your employer to know you've stolen, that's what you say you're doing. So you steal stuff on your employees.
Respect.
Yes.
It's basic respect.
Yes. Yes. But it just so happens.
Me because you respect my
Right. I don't. If I stand in front of you, right? I don't have to qualify why I should trust what you say. Tell me what your penis looks like so I can trust you. That's not how it works. You need privacy to be able to respect people. That's what it does.
But when it gets to the workplace, there is a part where you need to expect that he employs you to do certain things, and he has the right to audit what you've done accordingly. Leon.
Yeah, I agree with the legal part. But let's go back to the gentleman's earlier example. So if you're trying to hide what you're doing, because, for example, there's porn being torrented while you're at work.
No, so my package is really telling. I'm just
an example, right? But I mean, hypothetically, whatever, like gambling websites, whatever it is that you're trying to hide. Like, remember, DNS is kind of revealing as well.
No, so
it's kind of one of those side channel leaks.
Just to make that point clear, so I'm sure you all are confronted with this. Even if you're running a server or something like that, your package list is pretty telling. So maybe you don't want the set of software that you're actually running there not to be known in the public. And once I'm connected to some kind of repository here in South Africa, SAX or something like that, then from there on, everything is private between me and the repository. Yeah. That's the only thing I'm saying. I'm not trying to,
so the point is, you need privacy, so then you want to use encryption to hide from other people.
Yeah, and it's also a security issue, I think, if people know what kind of packages you are running on your machine.
Could be. Maybe.
Obscurity by obscurity.
I mean, this is about emotions, isn't it?
Now, right. Now, let's get to one that the people love to use for encryption, and that is the example of credit card payment over the internet. And I'm sorry that Vikas is not here tonight. The assumption of credit cards, and I've lost my wallet at home, so I couldn't even bring you a credit card to show you. The assumption of any credit card payment, the way how the trust model of that financial system, how bad it is, works, for most part, is you need to have the card number, the CVV number, and the expiry number. When you have that 3 pieces of information, guess what? You can transact with that card over the internet for most purposes. Okay, I'm going to ignore the 3D secure type side channels. But for the most part, there's nothing else available to authenticate that actual card transaction. You just need those.
Address details is one.
What?
Address details is one other factor.
Yeah, that's in South Africa. In other countries, they use address details. The US does.
Yeah, but that's not that difficult to get either. So.
Which is why you authenticate.
So, to prevent any replay, we have to hide those details. And this is the important part here. You do not want that details to be publicly known, because the moment that it's publicly known, people can use that and abuse your credit card transactions. Because that is the way how this authentication mechanism works, by those 3 details there. And yes, in this case, HTTPS does need to encrypt. For the simple reason that you need to protect that information.
Because it's used in what? Authentication. Fuck, it sounds so familiar.
No, but this is a different type of authentication. This is the authentication where...
My argument to you is that this is the only way to authenticate.
No.
There's no other sound logical way.
How does SSH authentication works?
Sorry?
How does SSH authentication works?
So
how does client, what is it? Client key certificates works on browsers, where what key do they use? Do they have AES keys, DES keys, ARC4 keys? No.
They have what? What are they?
They are signed with SHA keys by the CA, and it's typically Diffie-Hellman or RSA keys.
So SHA doesn't sign things. SHA is a hash function. So,
but it's the same.
But the way any of this stuff works is by a public key. You're talking about public key cryptography.
Public key cryptography, and that is where you use to authenticate.
Yes. How does it work? How does it work? What do you do when you authenticate? Please explain to us how public key authentication works without the need for protecting secrets. I'd like to hear
check on the back of that.
Why don't
That's how authentication works. There's an
Why
old Dutch
don't you
guy.
have a counter talk for the next session?
I was going to, literally, after he said that, I was like, Christy, would you like me to do a talk on why you can definitely
Yes,
not
so
fucking
let's listen to this one
authenticate?
and
Sorry,
then
yes,
we'll
go for it.
I just maybe want to short circuit this and say that there's 2 different things being discussed here. Encryption does happen during authentication, but that is a completely separate and unrelated thing to content encryption. And the encryption that the talk is addressing here is the stream content encryption.
Okay,
and it's not talking about the encryption that happens during the exchange of
What I'm saying is, for any of those things to happen, there must be a protected secret. There's no way for authentication to happen
but that's
without
not
a
what
protected. So then we need to have privacy if we want to protect those secrets to be able to.
But that is not content encryption.
He said.
Talk about content
Feedback
encryption.
for the
Okay,
challenge.
fine. Look, why don't you and Bruce and I just finish the talk?
I actually have a very nice example on how to do that. I just need to get the numbers again. So yeah, the questions here goes about what I'm trying to do here is to make you guys think about, is encryption just going to solve everything? People are shouting HTTPS, HTTPS all the time. I made the statement that, and I believe I'll stand by that, that stream encryption, as you call it, that content is not necessarily solving all the problems. HTTPS might actually add several things, and this is where I had to cut down on my talk. Well, we've already been 70 minutes in this talk, and I actually haven't even addressed those sort of things, the pitfalls and the problems. So that's the next talk, can be pitfalls, traps, and what is it? Pitfalls, traps, about SSL encryption, setting it up. So yes, people do want to have privacy, but we need to understand where we apply it rather than just blindly applying it. And it's not about the encryption part that's always as important. It's about those authentication parts that are actually more important sometimes than just the plain encryption part of things. Cryptography is hard, and this sort of discussions that we have here means that there is lots of disjoint in it. Cryptography is not only encryption. Encryption is part of it, but it's about authentication also, and authorization. As I said, encryption is not what's needed. Authentication is sometimes. Encryption is only when you need to hide information. Yes, you can effectively do encryption, authentication without encryption. But the type of encryption being used is a different one than the one being used for the normal channel encryption.
But it is still encryption then.
I'll use the word authentication because you do not use it for the real encryption.
I think, just to paraphrase and just jump in if I'm getting this wrong. So you can use encryption to authenticate that I'm talking to you, and it's you, Keith. Like, you know, you've got a cert, I've got a cert. We can work backwards, and there's encryption happening for me to validate, for example, the certificate that you show me. If you're a web server and I'm a client. And cool. No, I mean, I think we're speaking technical languages. Shouldn't be a problem. However, then I've decided you are the server I want to talk to. But I decide, you know what? I don't actually have passwords or anything that sensitive that I need to hide, right? So I don't care. Whatever. Let's say I'm browsing. You're going to give me LOL cat pictures, right? And I'm like, cool. Right. And switch me to HTTP. I already know who you are because we've authenticated, and we did use encryption to authenticate. We all agree on that. Okay. But now after that, I'm like, yeah, I don't care. Show me the ads. Show me whatever.
You don't care. You don't care.
I say, so in this particular case, like for example, it's LOL pictures, okay, and
fine.
In another case, I do care. In which case, I do not want HTTP, and I do want HTTPS. Now I'm doing my banking details. Now I'm setting passwords.
So I love this example. He's posing exactly the problem I already know exists in your argument. Let's say that there is a way to encrypt without encrypting the rest of the conversation.
Yeah.
That's your incorruptible channel.
Okay, there's another sort of unicorn in the argument. How do you prove that a channel is incorruptible?
This is what authenticated channels do. Like,
yes.
No, they do not. This is not what they do. They ensure that two parties are actually communicating with each other. Encryption is what makes sure that communication stays between those two parties.
Now, encryption gives you privacy. It doesn't. You don't need encryption to prove the integrity of the message. You can have a plain text message which is authenticated and which you can verify hasn't been tampered with, even though it's plain text.
But if you have your, if you look at the Debian package management system, the Red Hat package management system, they do authentication, and none of their packages is encrypted.
Is there a possibility that your argument has been corrupt? But there's something.
It might have had the encrypted channel that corrupted.
Yeah, but showing someone all the ISO images that you download. And ISO image you download is not encrypted.
Yeah, authenticated encryption, which is how to authenticate your encryption and make sure that the encrypted message that's received by the recipient is not being corrupted.
Cool.
Which is adding an HMAC to the.
Right, but why is it called authenticated encryption? Why is it called that and not just authenticated?
Because you don't send the encryption message only to the target. You send the message encrypted ciphertext plus the
you send what you have encrypted and the indication that you have encrypted it, a authentication, right?
Yeah. No. Hold on. Again, the two keys being used is separate. The key for encryption is one key, the key that you're referring to, and being used for the authentication, the HMAC key, that's a different key.
Sure. So I have another argument. A couple of years ago, Mark Fowler gave a talk where he was basically introducing the idea of their secure mail client that they sort of just released in beta version. They've run out of funding, but where he spoke about why we should secure emails. And he said something interesting in that talk, and I haven't verified it on how you're going to verify something like this, but he said that the UK government obviously reads all the emails that passes through the email service and offshore. And they discard them because they've read them, they know which ones are bad, and the rest they don't really care about. And they keep all the encrypted emails forever.
Yeah.
So if we leave the point where we say, okay, well, let's not encrypt everything except for what's really sensitive, then we're reducing the surface that needs to be attacked. If we encrypt everything, there's no ways any government in the world would be able to store all the emails that we ever sent for the last couple of years. It's just not possible. So you could, in this case, the UK government is the bad guy. So let's overcome the bad guy in this way. It's the same as credit card transactions. There's a very small attack surface all of a sudden. I know I need to attack that little surface. That's all I need to attack. Everything else doesn't really matter because I can read it and I can see it doesn't really matter. So to encrypt all communication means that the surface is everything that exists.
But playing devil's advocate, you assume that the government is the bad guy, and that is the modern postmodernist turns to suspect all authority, and this has produced a problem in its own right.
Yeah.
I would actually take the argument down to the human level, and I would say to you, if I'm talking to you, I'm creating an authentication channel. The authentication channel is I know what your voice is, how your face looks. Exactly. Now, if I want to talk to you privately, I will go somewhere where I know other people can't hear me. Or I was speaking to you in a language that nobody else can understand. So now it gets more complicated, because now you have to take something that we naturally assume in the human sphere and turn it into something digital. Human beings don't work in a Cartesian model. We don't use zeros and ones. The whole digital model is broken.
Yeah.
It's broken.
So the way
because everything has to be more an odd or a one. Ultimately.
The internet is different to this room.
No.
In that everyone is listening to the internet.
Yes,
and there's only these people
the
that
problem
listen
is
to the
that
internet.
internet is incapable of nuance because everything has got to do with zeros and ones.
But so there's a much deeper conversation I need to have with you about whether computers are emulating us with binary or whether we're emulating something else.
And they're definitely not encrypting. Okay, let's go back to, we can move those off. As a closing part it's a very emotional argument, and instead of technical, and this is one of the things that hit me during the preparation for this, is that it becomes very emotional. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to me. Go home and rest.
Is it the REST API or?
Questions?